Okay, so let's start. Yes. So before going into programming or learning a programming language, do we know how any programs work? So do you guys have any idea? You can write about your ideas in the chat box. Feel free, whatever knowledge you might have, you can post it regarding this as to how does a program work? How is a program executed? Follows an algorithm converting the code into zeros and ones. Program requires a specific syntax that gives output equipment input directions or commands to get the output. Program gives instructions to computer to perform a task, a function. Okay, so we are mostly on the right track. Cool. So what is a program? A program is a set or a sequence of instructions which are followed to perform some task. Okay. Now, these programs, the programs we write, say in Python or some other language, C, C++, Java, this is called high level language. Why? Because this is more closely connected to the human way of speaking. Mm. Yeah, I have met questions. So, okay, programs are, huh. Kumarjit, you are right as well. Okay, so most of you are on the right track. So let's just focus on something. Before a program is executed, the program needs to be loaded in the main memory. Okay, so any program that needs to be executed needs to be loaded into the main memory. Without loading it into the main memory, you can never execute a program. Okay, so main memory being the RAM. So this now goes to the processor. Okay, each instruction is fetched from the main memory into the processor, where you are giving the command like execute instruction 1, execute instruction 2, and so on. Okay, yeah. So basically, you have your source code, which is in the form of a high-level programming language saved in your hard disk drive. Okay, this needs a compiler. What is a compiler? Basically, suppose I am a Bengali, so I know Bangla, but I need to talk to someone who knows Malayalam. Okay, so I can directly talk to him or her or that person. Okay, so I will need a translator who will convey my knowledge into their language. Okay, so this translator is the compiler. The role of this translator is played by the compiler. Okay, so what does this compiler do? This essentially translates the high level programming language into machine level language or bytecode, which is a language on the form 0, 1, and so on. Okay, now before going into Python programming, let's see how a Python program is executed. Okay, so suppose you need to execute this line from the terminal, say python hello.py. Okay, so when you are using the keyword Python, it calls the Python interpreter. Okay, so when the Python interpreter is called, the compiler fetches the source code from the hard disk drive, which is then converted into bytecode or machine language. Okay. Now, this bytecode goes into the Python virtual machine and thus you get the final Python output. Hmm. we are done with this part for now. So, is there any doubt? I think it should be clear to most of you guys because it seemed to me that most of you have a knowledge about compilers, interpreters, and etc. etc. So you can execute a Python program on various platforms, various IDs, integrated development environments. Like you can execute it in Py files, Py scripts, which mean the extension .py. Okay, so mostly you can do this when you are using a large framework. But if it is a smaller uh, framework where you just need to see immediate results, uh, you can always choose the Jupyter notebook or some Python notebook for. So we will use the Colab free version for doing this class. So this is how you open a Colab notebook. You first go search colab.research.google.com. You will get an option. You choose new notebook. There we are done. Okay. So let's eliminate this. Okay. So let's start with the building block of any programming language. The most mandatory statement is to print hello. So this is the print statement. The first always takes some time to execute it. Hmm, good. Now suppose if you can you do this on VS Code or you have to work on Colab. You can use any platform you are comfortable with, but I shall be demonstrating on Google Colab. We can use comment line. How to use the comment line? We need to use a hashtag symbol. Correct command. Okay. Or you can use control backslash. Cool. So why do we use comment lines? So that it helps in documentation or in large works, in large frameworks. So this is a single line code. You often need reference to understand somebody else's code. Okay. So we use comment lines. This is a single line comment. Also, yeah, just for now I'll get into this. I was just about to go into this. That we can also use a multi-line comment. But before that, let's just do simple operation. Now, if I enclose this same piece of code within, if we use this, then we can also use it for multi-line code. For example, that it's multi, multi. So you can use three single inverted commas or double inverted commas. Both work on the same. Things are multiple. Audio isn't clear on my side. Okay, so is it clear or is it that bad right now? Also, voice is very low. Okay, so now is it clear? If I speak, my voice is a bit muffled. So if I speak loudly, is it clear now? Okay, cool. Int a comma in, but we don't declare data type. No, we'll get into data types. We don't declare any data types per se in Python. So hard to are you from Rohora? Okay, don't mind me asking, but hard are you from Rohora? Okay, okay. Cool. Okay. So first, let's look into variables. Okay, the most essential part. So what is a variable? A variable is a named memory location. So in our memory, we fix an address space and we give a name to it. We assign a name to it and we say this is a variable. And why is it a variable? Because the value can change anytime, right? So what are the various types of variables? So first we start with integer variables. In Python, we do not declare the data type of the variable beforehand. For example, if I write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, what? Now, how to check the data type of this variable? So I can use the type function. So this type. Okay. So what is a function? I use the term function. But what is a function? A function is a segment of code that we can reuse again and again. Okay. Thus, now another related term to function is methods. So we often refer methods as functions or functions as methods, but there is a subtle difference to it. So can anybody say what is the difference between uh, hello? So can anybody say what is the difference between a function and a method? A method is a function of a class. Hmm. So is that class predefined or user defined? User defined. Hmm. Okay, so yeah, it is cool. So method is a function can be used anywhere, mostly anywhere, depending on the type. Yeah, so you're on the right track. Okay. So not the same for method. So methods are functions that are declared in some class. It can be user defined, it can be predefined. So that is not the matter. Because for example, I don't know if you are accustomed with Java. In Java, if you use uh, the main method, you refer to it as a method that belongs to some class. Okay. Or if you use some other function, say some function of the math class, then you refer to it as a method itself. Okay. So a method is not necessarily user defined. Okay, it can be predefined as well, but it always belongs to some class. We'll later look into class or object or functions. Okay. Cool. Okay. So what does this function do? This function returns something. So what does it returns? So it returns the data type of the variable used. The data type of the variable used. So upload variable is a decimal point variable. Let's execute this. Okay. So as you can see that the variable a belongs to type integer. Okay. And the variable pi belongs to type float. We have some other variables as well, like things. Yeah, type pi. What about type? Okay, okay. Sorry. It's the same thing. Okay. So even if I use strings, so this belongs to string. What is a string? A string is a sequence of character. What is a character? Single occurrence of any digit, word, special token is called a character. Can you please repeat the difference between method and a function? Okay, so function is a block of code that we can use it whenever and wherever we want. Okay, but a method is a function that is defined within some class. Okay, or it is an instance of a class. But both have the same job, which is to be repeatedly used. What Sarthak Devankan, float variables. Yeah, what about float variables? Okay, so Pearl, I guess you can understand. Sir, can you please define what a class is? Okay, so let's just provide an overview of a class. So what is a class? A class is a blueprint of some one. Okay. For example, if you do some car, okay. So what about a car? You know that a car will contain some, it will contain some steering wheel, some tires, okay, some wheels, and each car, say Hyundai one, okay. So you will have to design Hyundai Verna to meet certain specifications, okay, which will remain the same for all the different, all the innumerable amounts of Hyundai Verna that will be produced in the market. Now, suppose you are buying a Hyundai Verna, say model number 001, and someone else is buying model number 002. Okay, so these model number 001 and 002, these two models are objects which are real life entities of what? Of a class. What is the class? The blueprint of Hyundai Verna, which is Hyundai Verna. Another example would be, suppose you all are studying in some class. Okay, so you are in a class 9C. Okay, okay, so you are working in a class, say, no, you are studying in a class in 9C. So what are the common features that you guys will have? Okay, so the common features will be, most of you will have, sorry, not most of you, but okay, some common features will be two eyes, two legs, two hands, etc., etc. But if I pick two students, okay, and other common features will be, you will share some common subjects like physics, chemistry, maths, bio, etc., history, geography. But if I pick two individual students, say Harsh Patel, and say I pick another one, say Siddhant Sharma, okay, then these two individual students, these are objects of what? Class 9C, which has a blueprint, that what does the blueprint contain? That I will have these students, okay, students are studying these subjects. This is the blueprint for students studying in class 9C. Okay. So this is what a class and objects roughly refer to. Or another example can be, have you guys seen people making sweets? So say you have some raw material, you fix it in some pattern. Okay, there's a device to fold the sweets into some pattern and you get those sweets individual. So this device that shapes them, okay, that shapes those sweets, this can be referred to as the class, because no matter what, this will just print all those in the same pattern. But if you picked up two individual sweets, those become the objects of the class. So this is a rough concept about of classes and objects. So I guess you could understand a rough overview. So a full detailed class will be taken on class of and object oriented programming. So obviously you can learn in detail from that class. Okay. Yeah. So let's look more into this. Now we also look into another type of variable which is called Boolean variable. What is a Boolean variable? Basically true or false. Okay, 0 and 1. 0 means false, 1 means true. Okay, for example, say this is something that you guys should see after the class. But for now, let's just keep it true. Let me post myself. Yeah, so this bool refers to Boolean, which is true or false. I guess most of you will eventually fill it as false. Okay, the jokes apart. Now, what if we need to convert the data types? For example, if you are working with float variables or integer variables alone, you might face some issues. Okay. So to overcome this, we use type conversion. What is that? Conversion of one data type to another. Okay. So there are two types of data type conversion. One is the implicit type. Means suppose I am doing some operation and by default I expect some result. So by default my result shall be in the data type of the higher order. So for example, if I am working with an integer variable and I am operating it with some float variable, then the result of this operation shall be in float because the float has a higher power. So let's see if a is equal to a minus. So previously we had checked that the data type is okay. So you guys might have seen that whenever I'm typing something, there's some suggestions by Google Assistant. So this is also known as Copilot, and this is an example of how AI can help you for coding. So previously, just in the cell above or in the prior cell, we had declared A to be an integer type variable, and we are using the same variable here in this cell. Okay. So when I am operating it with some float variable, this gets converted into what? Into a float type variable itself. Okay. However, originally A was an integer type variable. So this is an example of implicit type data conversion. Now, what is explicit? When we force the data type conversion. So if I force a float variable to be an integer variable uh, to be a float variable, or some, let's say, boolean variable to an integer variable, or vice versa. So this is an example of explicit type data conversion. For example, if I say, so this is also known as conversion. Look at, so the value of type previously was 3.14 and it gets truncated to 3. Similarly, if we check, So is there any doubt till now? Are we clear? So then we'll go forward to the next part. So I think in this session of internship, most of you are aware of basic Python programming or some other programming languages. Right? There's some more responses, please, to confirm that I can go forward to the next topic. Seems a fair amount. Okay. So let's check some basic operations which all of you might be aware of. So for those who are completely new to Python, you can follow this to understand the basic stuff. And for others who are quite well acquainted, this might provide you a revision or recap. Whatever. So let's use an string. What is an string? It is a formatted string. Okay. So where we can use to type something, some output, and also use variables. So if you need to type some variable, then we do it in some in when it is enclosed in some curly braces. Okay, the F means it is a formatted string. Okay, so what if you want to type some message and also print some variable in a single statement? So you can do this using these formatted strings. Okay, F stands for format. Is it clear? Okay, this Sarthak had asked me previously as well. Did not understand why we use type. That why we use type. We use type some function or the we use the type method to check the data type of some variable. Okay, and why in curly braces? Okay, so suppose you want to print some variable message and numbers together. Okay, yeah, yes, but to print some message and numbers together, we can use if strings. Okay, so why curly braces? So since you can see, I am typing the message numerator and denominator within the double inverted commas. Now, how can I distinguish whether it is a variable or it is a message? or a print statement. So to demarcate this, we say that it, the text that is enclosed in between curly braces should be considered as variables. Okay, is it clear, Sarthak? Okay, we can also string. Lakshman, please explain. Or you can provide an example. I'll execute that and see if that works. No, how will that work? Then that will be considered as a string. No, that will not be considered as a variable. Hmm. Okay. Now let's learn something called the try-catch exception block. Okay. For Python, it is try and except block. Try and except. So suppose for cases you know that you might find an error or you might encounter some error. Hmm, what is if after print? Okay, so I had mentioned this before. This F means it is a formatted string. Okay, so when to use a formatted string? When you want to deal with both text and numbers. Okay, how in this example, when we are enclosing the entire statement within inverted commas, it becomes a string. But in this specific area, I also want to use variables. As you can see, I use numerator both in variable form as well as in can you just those variables to execute operation like a is equal to 2. Yes, you can use that. Okay. Of course, you can use that. Hmm. For example, okay, say, okay, so where was I? Let me get a to Shub's doubt. Okay, for Shub's case, yeah, so we are dealing with both strings and variables or numbers in the same segment. So this is why we are using these f strings also called formatted strings. Sir, is it the same as printf in C language? No, this is not the same as printf in C language. So let's just replace these with Okay, so we have stored the results of these operations in a variable. Okay, if you want, you can later print the types of these variables. Or I can do it here. So although you can see that both these variables, numerator and denominator, were of type integer, eventually, in case of division, since it results in a decimal point value, okay, the division operation, the final output is of type float. Division is always float. Yes, for division it is always float. Okay. Now, suppose we face an error and we are aware, okay, that if this situation arises, it is an erroneous situation. For example, if I just okay, so one common error is the zero division error, which we call as divide by zero. Okay, so since it is not possible, so let's just say let's just change it to zero and it shall work. Okay, I have used a beautiful print statement. Huh, here is right. Then is try similar to no, null will not be integer even if the resulting answer is in decimals, and try similar to if else statements. No, try is not similar to if else statements, but generally try does produce a beautiful answer like in the books before. Unfortunately, maybe if I restart and run on it shall work. Okay. Is except same as catch. Yes, except is same as catch. Okay, yeah, correct. So if the operator paste here, yeah, still you know, why is this so? 10 into 0. Okay, okay, okay. So since we were encountering this first, so it was being executed till here. and it did not reach here. Yeah. So this is the real problem. So I guess even if I use the div variable here, okay, so then it would rest here. So whenever the division by zero was encountered there, it showed an error. What is catch? Catch is something in Java. Okay, so we are not covering that here. But if you comes to the try except, this except is similar to the catch keyword in Java. Okay, so what does this except do? So suppose you know that these errors will occur. Okay, so zero division error is a standard error, and you don't want to stop the execution whenever you face the error. So you just want to print a line that okay, I have faced this error and I want to further continue and not terminate the execution of the program. For these cases, you mention, so you can mention that this is the error I will face, which for now is zero division error, and then you say I'll execute this code. Okay, cool. For Nika Chakraborty, in Java, there is a try catch block by which you can denote or indicate. Yeah, runtime error. Runtime error, correct. Any type of error or yes, it is a runtime error because syntactically it is correct, and you shall only face these errors when you are executing the code. Okay, so just wait for 2 minutes. I need the charger to my laptop. Sorry. Hmm. Okay, so I'm back. Let's resume. Sorry for the fake. Now let's look into some string-based operations. Okay. So Kumarjit, did you have Java in your school, or did you have, or are you currently studying it in your college? Hmm. Hmm. Missing concepts. Cool. Okay. So I have two strings. Now I want to I do not have any idea about that. You can learn Python without having any understanding of any other programming language. Don't worry. So let's look into concatenation. What is concatenation? It is the addition or joining of two or more strings into a single string. Okay. Concatenation means the addition of two or more strings into a single. Okay. For example, name equal to. Okay. This will be okay. So let's look into this. Hmm. Okay. So ignore the length of a string for now. Okay. But just focus on the concatenation. Okay. To conjoin two strings, we shall use the plus operator. Cool. This is pretty much about it. Now, what is the length of the string? You can count the entire string itself, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. There are 16 characters. Now, we come into something interesting known as indexing. Okay. So, for example, let's look into this. Okay. Yeah. So, it automatically provided. Wonderful. However, more spaces would help. Okay. So, in computer science, we have this concept of indexing. That is, we always consider that the first character, the first element of some data structure or some string, we later look into lists which are similar to arrays. Okay, it always starts from zero. Okay. So, suppose now, what if I want to just print this E? How shall I do it? Let's see. Say, E. So, this printed E, right? Okay. Now, uh, provide data set to print the character index 2 in U. Cool. Are we clear? Anybody has any doubts till now? More responses, please. Want name to print K. Ah, yeah, that is a typo. It will print K. Yeah, good observation. So, mm, it also counts space. Yes, it does count space. How to print multiple indices? Yes, we'll look into this now. Now, we shall come into a topic known as substrings. So, what is a substring? Just like subsets are subsequence in a string or other of a string. So, how this is done? Let's write the syntax. String name, lower bound to upper bound. Okay. Mm, choose multi-line code. Output, output will be the characters from lower bound to upper bound minus 1. Okay. So far so good. So let's try a first hand example. Say what does this return? Okay. It represents it returns 2 and 3. Okay. Or the characters at indices 2 and index 3. At indices 2 and 3. Yeah. Okay. So as I had already mentioned, that characters from lower bound to upper bound minus 1. So 4 minus 1 being 3. So you have the output having characters present at indices 2 and 3, which is k and e. Okay. Now let's try this example. So can you guess the output of this before I execute? Fast answers, please. G-U-K-E, G-U-K. Okay, G to E. Yes, I think you are right. However, let's check. So you guys are right. That is, when we leave this segment as blank, it means you start from the 0th index. Okay. Similarly, if I say this, it means you start from the second index and you go till the rest to the remaining of the string. Okay, from that is from k to last. Quick, you guys are quick learners. Now let's look into negative stuff. String. So what does this minus 4 represent? Can anybody take a guess? Ah, yeah, it means length of the string minus 4. Okay, so consider it to be as character at index of date minus. uh, okay, so it is R. Is it also called slicing? Yes, this is also called slicing. Okay. Mm, Now, how to do reverse strip? First, you need to consider the entire string. So you use this. Then you say start from minus one. Okay. And now you have the entire reverse string. And certain trivial operations that might come in handy, that mean conversion to different cases, right? Uppercase, lowercase, and there's also something called the title case, which means that the first occurrence of the character that is present right after some space, or the first, or or if a character is present at the 0th index, then it gets converted into the uppercase, and the remaining cases remain to be minus. Remaining cases remain at 0, at lowercase. Yeah. Okay, so let's see the title case. Okay, since name is already in, so is this clear? Okay, so Pearl has asked me to repeat the reversal of a string. Okay, so this statement which is being named and within third brackets you have double colon minus 1. While selecting the first column, it means that we are taking the whole sequence. Okay, and then the minus 1 denotes that you need to put the entire string in reverse. Okay, is it cool? Yeah. Lakshman, I have explained that just now. I hope you have heard it. So the first colon denotes that you take the entire set statement or the entire string, the entire sequence, and the second colon mentions the step. Minus 1 means that you print it in reverse. Good. Sarthak. So far so good. So this essentially will be minus 1, this will be minus 2, this will be minus 3, and so on. I hope you can fill in the rest when I provide you the note. Now, we will look into certain conditional statements. So, what is conditional statements? Statements that are executed based on certain conditions, right? You need to satisfy some conditions, only then shall these statements be executed. So, one of them is if else. If, so the syntax is very easy. Mm, uh, statement, if, L, if can be roughly interpreted as else if, and this else. So let's look into some example. Suppose, oh, we shall also look into a few logical operations. Okay, so what are these? These are and, or. Let's for now we consider draw. Okay, but we shall use and or here. So let's only consider these two. So, what do you mean by and? When I say P and Q, okay? When I say P and Q, P result shall be true only if both the conditions P and Q are true. Okay. So basically it is a propositional logic that where P and Q, these are certain declarative statements. Okay. So as we know, any declarative statement can be either true or it can be false. Okay. So when I say that it is only true for the case of both P and Q, it means that both the result of condition P and the result of condition Q must be true for the entire operation P and Q to be true. Okay. Now let's see and okay or okay. So let's see what is our if either or both. That means if any one of condition P or condition Q is true, then the result shall be true. Or if both the conditions P and Q are true, then it definitely should be true. Okay. So this is about logical logic. So I can also do a truth table. Mhm. So in P and Q, only one case is true, which is when both P and Q are true. And in P or Q, we can see that when both the cases are true, it is definitely a true. And in either of the cases, it is okay. So a working example of if and else statement based on this, say suppose I have physics equal to 85. So you can even else your parents are very strict and they'll ask you to get out of your house. So since my marks have satisfied the first tier, it goes into 10 plus, right? Let's plug and play. If both are equal, it will go into get out of the house. Or for this case, if I use or, then there will be a game changer. And that since either of these condition is true, okay, this condition is not true, but this condition is true, then we get into the if block of this section. What if we use another number? Okay, so far so good. What if we use another? Let's try minus 2. So I think it just skipped elements that because this is some strange weird behavior shall the people see it. Okay. So please say if you have understood this if else block. Okay, cool. So next up we will look into certain data structures known as lists. Are we looking at lists now? Yeah. So you can also call it as some other data type. So what does list do? You can keep multiple elements of different data types in a single variable or in a single container, then it's called a list. Okay. So how are these represented? Using third brackets. So suppose I want to say very okay. Float. You can also keep a variable. So I write pipe. Okay. So if I print, so we can see that it belongs to the class list. Okay. So what did you understand about list? A list is a container that can keep multiple data types together, multiple elements of multiple data types together. Okay, so unlike there's a concept called arrays in C or Java or in classical data structures. So what does that do? In that you can keep multiple elements, but they must be of similar data type. Okay, but in this case, you can also keep, in the cases of lists, you can also keep elements of multiple data types. Cool. Okay. So let's just say that indexing in lists is of the same type as in strings. Okay. For example, now next so you guys should be comfortable about this, and you should be able to tell me the following outputs if you have understood strings properly. Mm, Tell me the outputs of these. Let's see who can. Okay, the first one. What will be the output of this? Hermione run. Was this Harry? Okay, so it will not be Harry and Hermione. Why? Because the indexing starts from 0. So Harry will be 0, Hermione will be 1. Okay, so the correct output shall be Hermione and Ron. Okay, now tell me the output of this second one. Hermione to Snape. Hermione to Snape. Hermione to Lust. Hermione. Okay, so you got this correct. And the third one, Harry, Hermione, Ron. Correct. Last one, reverse. Correct. Okay, so done. Now we will learn something known as loops. Now, to access the elements in lists, we need something known as loop. So, primarily, just tell me, what do you understand by loop? Okay. Apart from programming language, we often use the phrase that I got stuck in the same loop. It means doing the same task again and again, right? So if you want to iterate through elements or through a range of elements and do the same thing again and again, then we use loops. Okay, that means we iterate. We keep on iterating until say some condition is fulfilled. So for the basic for loop, this is the loop counter variable I, which means this will control my elements in this thing. Okay. So if I say for I in range 5, print I. Okay, let me keep another cell for no. So we saw the out. That means we start from 0 till 4. That means the bound entered here minus 1. Now let's see something known as dry run or for loop. Okay, so the first iteration. We are at the first iteration. We have the value of I is equal to 0. Okay. We have the value of I equals to 0. And what I have asked, print I. That means we print 0. Now, automatically, if we just don't provide any condition, okay, that in then the value or the loop counter variable's value is incremented by 1. That means it gets added with 1. Okay, so by default, the value of I is incremented by 1. That is I equals to I plus 1 equals to 0 plus 1 equals to 1. Okay, so the updated value of I is 1. Updated value of I after the first iteration is is 1. Similarly, for the second iteration, we have I is equal to 1. Then I print 1 and this continues. Okay. So I is equal to I plus 1 into, then for the third iteration, I will have fourth iteration and fifth iteration. I will have I is equal to 4. I guess till now it is clear. Okay. Now, after the fifth iteration, the updated value is 5. The condition of range says that it will only be executed till the range till 5 minus 1. Okay. Till 5 minus 1. This is the condition of range. Okay. So now for the sixth iteration, I is equal to 5 fails the loop condition, fails the loop condition, So the loop gets terminated here. So quick question. Let's see if you can answer this based on the understanding of these discussion of this discussion of for loops and about for loops. Hmm. What is the output of the range? Say if I write range 5. So what shall be the output of range 5? Oh, this is trivial. Hmm. Say 7. And this is still very trivial, but let's see if you can answer. Quick answers, please. 0 to 6. 0 to 6. Or should it be just 6? Should it be just 6? Is there any chance that it can be just 6? Just- Okay. So you guys are right that it should be 0 to 6. If incremented by 6, then only 6 can be possible. Eh, Scroll up the screen. Okay, so by default, it says that you go on incrementing by plus 1 and you cover the range. Now, if I say 2, then it will be I plus 2 plus 2 plus 2. Then also 2 is start, start stop. So let's just say 0, 2. It will be incremented by 2. Okay. So the range function is signified as start, stop, and step. So what does the step mean? Step means the incrementing factor. Okay. Okay. So clear is for loop clear. So now let's come back to handling strings. Okay. So I think today's class was a bit too slow. Uh, should I increase the pace from tomorrow? Because I feel there's one section that I won't be able to cover, which I had thought of covering. Is it too slow? Tomorrow, should I go faster? Okay, okay. Then I shall go faster. So usually what happens is that in most of the cases in these internships, uh, generally majority of the students in our batch, they're not acquainted to Python programming as such, or some of them are not even acquainted to any form of programming. So this is why I tend to go slow in the first class. But I feel that today I have gone a bit too slow. So yes, you will get the IPN, IPYNB file to review the concepts. Okay, so let's see an application of for loop and if else. Say, mm, okay, so let's see what happens. Uh, so for the first three, these do not fall into these conditions. So it automatically gets jumped into the else part. And for I think the next one is triple. Yeah. So for the first index or the for the iteration, uh, I get the keyword as Draco in I. Then this if condition is satisfied. So what does Draco usually say? What is the difference between Elif and else? So in Elif, you can provide a condition, but in else you don't provide a condition. It means if the above conditions do not occur, okay. If the above conditions are not encountered, by default you print this. Okay, but or by default you execute the following pieces of piece of code. Okay, block of code. Cool. Okay. Yeah. So as soon as it meets Draco, when the value of I is Draco, okay. So this is condition is satisfied. So you print this. and when and then the I value is incremented to the next index, which is snip, and then you look for snipping the conditions. You the first condition fails, the second condition is satisfied. So just like snip, you deduct 50 points from different. Good. So let's just see more operations on strings. I might take a few more minutes than the scheduled time. I hope you guys will cooperate. Okay. So first is stripping white spaces. That suppose we have white spaces in the beginning or the end of a string. Okay. To remove that, we use a function dot strip. Okay. So stripping white spaces. uh, so initially we had 24 characters. Initially we had 24 characters, but now we have 22 characters, which means the first two characters, not the first two, sorry, that the characters on both edges, okay, those have been removed. Those white spaces have been removed. So, okay, so it means that suppose my strings start with multiple white spaces. White spaces means just consider them to be lots of spaces. Okay, and it ends with a space. Okay, so if I use dot strip function, then it will remove all these extra spaces from the beginning and from the end of the string. Clear? Now let's see replacing some string, some substrings. Okay. So I noticed that some of you have already left. Is this class that boring? Yeah. So even with this dot strip function, you can also remove specific characters like mm, say text. Okay, let's introduce a hash here. mm, Hash here. Now I want to print the same thing. Text with hash dot strip. Okay. As you can see that the hashtag signs from the beginning of the string have been removed. Can we use input the index of a space if we want to remove the function? I think that can be done, but not through this. That can be done, but not through this. So suppose I want to um, replace some substring, like the find and replace option in PDF editors or in any text editor. Now I want to replace this as or so yeah, you can also remove any character including alphabets. No issue about that. Okay. So then my string SIRIUS serious got replaced with ACRIOUS serious. Okay. So you can also count the occurrence of a substring, or you can find the position of some substring, say find substring. Okay. Position equals to, so if you print this, okay, then No, there will be no value. Now if you print this, it will print you the position of S. Okay. So if you calculate this, later you can do it at your leisure. That if you calculate this, you'll find S, the position of S being printed. Cool. And you can also count the number of strings after some quarter travel. Use this. Simple. So yeah, this will give you two because there are two occurrences of quarter. Ah. Okay. So yeah, so we can skip for now, and maybe you guys can try these programs before tomorrow's class. A quick question: can you guys say where does a code begin from in a program? Can we replace multiple words at a time? No, you can't replace multiple words at a time. So I'm giving you certain basic programs. So this is for absolute beginners, and for those who already know these can skip. Those who are new to programming should try this. No, except cannot be used without try. Mm, when we will get the file? I hope by tomorrow morning. Can we please find the position topic again? Okay, wait. Just I mean exclude. What do you mean by exclude, Vishal? These are homework, sir. Yes, sir. Where to submit homework, sir? I'll let you know. Are you going to discuss this tomorrow? Yes, we can discuss this tomorrow if you face it. Okay, so let's call it a day. So let me stop sharing. Hmm. Okay, so please can you explain? Oh, sorry, missed out that part. Finding position topic again. Okay, so okay, wait, I shall present it to you. Hmm. Okay, so if you want to find the position of this string, okay, of the substring in a string, then you use the find method. Then you use the find method. Okay, so what does this do? This will find the position of the first element of the substring in the bigger string. Okay, for example, this substring we want to find here is serious. Okay, so it will look for serious in this string. Okay, which is at position 28. This substring starts from position 28, so it will return 20. Is it clear? Yes, you will get this Google Colab link for. Yes, you can leave. You can leave. Just I'll end this meeting. Okay. Yeah, thank you. Guys.